The most recent underage human trafficking arrests happened right here in Langley, in Walnut Grove. I think that harm reduction is on a continuum, and we need both options. Because what I know for sure is that dead kids don't recover.
And then there's like 20 beds, and it was like $2 billion or whatever. Wouldn't it be worthwhile to like make a building that could house more people than that without all the fancy sculptures and shit in it?
Right now, we're seeing a ton of newcomer youth. Canada has implemented some pretty lofty immigration targets, but hasn't added any support or thought to what we're going to do when they get here. People don't have housing. People are dying of overdoses. Clearly, we're getting something wrong here. So
welcome. This is live from Langley BC, the #1 podcast in Langley, where we talk to local residents and business owners about local events and businesses. I am your host, Megan from the local space. My co-host is absent today, and today we have Chelsea from Covenant House. So Chelsea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Chelsea, and I'm the Chief Program Officer at Covenant House in Vancouver. And Covenant House is an organization that serves the Lower Mainland, and we work with homeless, at-risk, and trafficked and exploited youth ages 16 to 24 that come to us from really all across the province and across the world now with all the new waves of immigration. So we have a continuum of care that spans from street outreach to drop-in, a shelter program, transitional living facilities, life skills, mentorship, support, anti-trafficking coordinator. We try to wrap these young people in the support that they deserve.
So many things. Do you just have a location in Vancouver, or are there other locations in BC?
So there is just a location in Vancouver right now. And we are part of an international organization. We're independent, but part of this family that has another site in Toronto. So we have 2 in Canada, and then we have sites across the US and Latin America. I think there's 27, 28. Don't quote me. There's a few of them.
Oh, cool. How did you get started with it?
Completely by accident. So I grew up in small town, northern BC, and my mom was a foster parent. So we kind of had foster kids around. But I decided to work in the spa industry because I liked going to the spa.
There are a lot of spas in northern BC.
No, but it was like my favorite thing to do anytime I traveled to the city.
Okay.
So I think I just had this glamorous view of what the city was and found out quickly that's not what it is. So I don't really do feet and sweaty wax jobs. So that was short-lived. But when I worked at the spa, I used to walk by a youth drop-in center that would serve meals. It's not there anymore, but I was like, oh, this seems like a nice thing to do. So I would serve meals there, and it just felt like home. And it was actually some young people there that told me about Covenant House, and that's where they were staying, and it was right down the street. And I was like, I've got to investigate this place. And so I was 22 years old, and I marched myself down there with a resume, no formal experience, and basically begged them to take a chance on me. And that was 16 years ago, getting old. And it's just kind of been home ever since.
So you kind of just grew in the business. You didn't go to like schooling or anything?
I did. So I worked my way through social work school while I was working there. So I have a master's in social work from UBC, but I did that while I was working there. And I've done a lot of things there. I was a frontline youth worker, a social worker, ran the transitional housing program, was a clinical director, and now here I am. I guess I'm kind of a lifer there. But it was really by accident. A kid told me, hey, you want to check out this place we live? And I was like, okay, sounds good. And walked over there and got a job.
Like, were you going over there thinking you want a job, or you're just going to go check it out?
Yeah, it seemed like a good thing to do. Oh. And I was done waxing and doing pedicures. And I definitely like going to the spa, but not working there.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to work in a spa.
There are like special people there, but.
What's your favorite like job that you've done so far with Covenant House?
I think there's aspects of each of them that are my favorite, but my favorite part is when I get to interact with the young people and when they come back. So now that I've been there a long time, I start to see youth who come back and visit. And when you're in this kind of work and working with young people who have pretty significant complex care needs, you don't always see like the fruits of your labor right away. You get a lot of like, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Sure.
So like a lot of you get a lot of attitude from them, but you don't always see.
Was that your swear word?
Where they get? No, I think I just go without a swear word. I was going to give an example of how the youth talk, but you can just imagine. But now they come back and they introduce their kids and they tell me about their jobs, and it's like, yeah, all of that chaos and hard work and tears and like banging your head against the wall thinking, how am I ever going to help this young person understand that they're worth it? And then they come back and they've realized they're worth it. That's pretty special.
Are there like statistics that like say how much it helps versus if they just stayed on the streets or wherever they were before they came to Covenant House?
Yeah, so we have a lot of stats on the efficacy of our programming and the outcomes of our program. We've been collecting it for 15 years. And then we can see the stats on the street, right?
Yeah.
So right now, overdose, for example, is a leading cause of death of young people in this province. And what we know is that young people who are engaging with Covenant House have better outcomes around their mental health, their physical health, their ability to maintain and find employment, their housing. So we know that being engaged with programming makes a difference for these kids, for sure.
What do you think about obviously the overdose crisis is horrible. Like what do you think needs to get done?
Oh,
what is your opinion?
What is my opinion? My opinion is that we need to do better in a lot of respects. There's the social policy piece around it. It was bad social policy that got us into this. When you look at the history of drug prohibition, it's really rooted in racism and colonialism. And we've made value judgments over what types of drugs and alcohol are good and okay, and what kinds are bad, and what kinds we're willing to put kind of like supports around and what we're not. Because alcohol, bars are managed consumption sites. Coffee shops, managed consumption sites. So we're making value judgments about who's using what. I think that we spend a lot of time and waste a lot of time arguing over harm reduction versus traditional abstinence-based recovery. And I think that has to stop. I think that harm reduction is on a continuum and we need both options. Because what I know for sure is that dead kids don't recover.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to have meaningful relationships that lead to abilities to have conversations around different options and dreaming about the future and living a whole life, we can't lead with the only way you're deserving of care is if you're abstinent first. We also know that most people dying of the drug overdoses, this is not a downtown east side problem. Most of them are middle-aged people dying in private residences. This is happening in my neighborhood. It's happening in your neighborhood. And people are scared to talk about it. There's a lot of shame and stigma around it. So if we as a community focused on the people and focused on the relationship and saw the drug use not as the problem, but the drug use as a desperate attempt to help solve a problem for people. People don't wake up and think, oh, I'm going to be a drug addict. That's a really great plan for my life. People are suffering.
Yeah.
And those drugs serve a purpose for them. It's a means of connection, of not having to feel some of the horrible things they're feeling. So if we can focus on the person and meeting them where they're at, those overdose deaths will go down. I think the other piece about the overdose crisis is that we only talk about the people who die. We don't talk about the ones who are surviving multiple overdoses and the acquired brain injuries that are a result of that and what that's going to cost society.
Yeah.
So
what do you think the government needs to change?
I think the government needs to start seeing people as people. I think they need to stop with the Band-Aid solutions. I think they need to stop with the goal of trying to win elections and actually give a shit about these people. This is a nonpartisan issue that impacts all of us and is going to take a holistic approach. I think the government needs to have ministries that talk to each other because all they do is say, well, it's this person's issue or it's this ministry's problem. And if you're really going to address holistic wellness, which you're going to have to do if you want to address the overdose crisis, it's going to take health and housing and mental health and addictions and the ministry responsible for job stuff. Like they're all going to have to come together to support people so they don't need to use drugs to ease their suffering. And they need to listen. Like they need to truly listen to their constituents, not just host town halls because it's a ticky box, but really listen with intent to take action. The other issue is that in my world, I work with youth. And working with youth is not the same as working with adults. So they've got to stop trying to put adult systems onto youth because it doesn't work. You need developmentally appropriate care for children and youth.
Mm-hmm.
They're not capable. Their brain is not the same as ours. And so trying to just, well, here, we did this, problem solved. No. So there's a lot they need to do, but mostly they just need to start listening to the people doing the work.
Do you think their youth buildings that they build need to be as I just find that like when they are like launching this new building, like mental health building, and then there's like 20 beds and it was like $2 billion or whatever, wouldn't it be worthwhile to like make a building that could house more people than that without all the fancy sculptures and shit in it?
Where's this building with the fancy sculptures? Yeah, I think there needs to be a lot less performative pieces to this. I think what matters in terms of buildings for youth is that they are built in a way that is trauma-informed, that they are purpose-built. They're not just a fancy, pretty building that actually no youth would ever feel comfortable in. They don't want to be in another building that looks like a hospital. They want to be in a building that feels like home, that's comfortable. One of the things that we heard when we built our new building is that they didn't want any dead ends in hallways because of their trauma histories. So in our hallways, you'll notice there's either a door or window at either end. So those are the types of things that need to be considered in terms of building design. The youth don't care about the name of the artist. What about having the youth that are in your programming make the art for the space? You know, I can't name the sculpture artist, that's for sure. And also, there's value in terms of housing and spreading it out. Like these youth want to be in community.
Yeah.
And if they're properly supported to do that, then they're going to be your amazing next employees. And they're going to be doing podcasts and they're going to be becoming doctors. Like we have a young person right now in medical school because she had appropriate support. So
that's awesome, though.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Family doctor. We need family doctors. And also 10 years from now, the family doctor for your family is going to once have been a homeless youth.
Yeah.
Like that is the power of seeing them and providing what they deserve. You know, I think we need a shift in thinking in our communities around what is a homeless youth.
Do you find a lot of your youth do substances?
So I would say there's probably about 60% are living with substance use to some degree. I mean, that can look like smoking pot on the weekend, or that can look like significant substance use that really impacts their life. So part of it, though, is we're working with adolescents. So some of it is developmentally appropriate behavior. And our job is to help them navigate how to do that safely. So we do a lot of safety planning and life skills work around that sort of stuff.
So what is the youngest age that you guys take in?
So technically we serve youth 16 till their 25th birthday. But we've had young people as young as 12 show up at our drop-in, or young as 12 that our outreach teams are encountering on the street. And what we do with those young people is make sure that they are connected to the appropriate resource, because it's not always appropriate for a 12-year-old to be with our 20-something-year-old. So we want to make sure that they're in the best spot for them. So our mandate is 16 to 24, but we see youth quite young showing up in need of support.
And are they mostly from the Vancouver area, or do they come from other areas
in BC? From all over. Not a lot of youth are actually born and raised in the city of Vancouver. So we get a lot of kids from the Fraser Valley. There's not a lot of services out here, so a lot of them come to the city. We get a lot of youth trying to come in from remote communities. We get a lot of Indigenous youth moving to the city. And right now, we're seeing a ton of newcomer youth. Canada has implemented some pretty lofty immigration targets, but hasn't added any support or thought to what we're going to do when they get here. So we've seen a dramatic increase in refugees, asylee youth.
Do you guys plan on building another location not in Vancouver?
Yeah, that's the question I get asked all the time. Maybe. I think the answer is maybe. I think that there's a lot of ways that we can scale our services. We do some of that now, consulting work with communities so that they can build that infrastructure in their own areas and with their own expertise. But does that look like building something or bringing services out to the valley? Maybe. So we're entering into a phase of strategic planning, and we're going to look at that. So we just finished a major expansion downtown. We have 3 buildings. we nearly tripled our capacity to serve youth. So we've got to have that settle a little bit and then see what is the best next step.
And how are you guys funded?
Primarily privately funded.
Okay.
So we only have about 5% government funding, which has pros and cons. Pros that we have a lot of freedom to be nimble to what the community needs. We're not tethered to whatever the flavor of the day is, but really hard to raise funds, as you can imagine, in an economy like this.
Yeah.
So 95% privately funded.
So is it like corporations or just people?
Both. So we have about 50,000 individual donors from all across BC and Western Canada. And then we also have corporations, foundations, grants, those types of things. And then we have a really fabulous gift in kind department where we have partnerships with a lot of businesses in the community to support with supplies that our young people need. So yeah, we cannot do it without the community.
Do you find that previous people that use your services then come back to give a hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They want to be involved, whether that is through advocacy work or donor work or peer support, event help. Yeah. A lot of them want to give back. I was actually at a meeting the other day and the Ministry of Children and Families was doing a consultation with some of our youth. And one of our current youth said, I really wish Covenant House could open more beds so more kids can get in because we have turnaway numbers. So the way these young people in dire situations, just trying to survive, are thinking about other people in their hardest times, it gives you a little bit of hope that maybe the future generation is going to do it better than us.
Hopefully.
I know, right? I know.
How do you separate what's happening at work when you go home? Because you have kids.
Honestly, probably not very well.
Okay.
I think that my work is a part of my life. It's a part of my family's life. My kids know what I do. And the nature of my role is it's not really 9 to 5. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's tough. And I'm doing my best to raise kind kids. And I do my best to be present with them when I'm home and not... Sometimes there can be temptation when my daughter is complaining about, the store being out of this name brand lip gloss. And I'm like, Amira, you have no idea like what it is to have a hard time. And I try not to do that because that's not helpful. But I think you got to find little ways to stay sane and remember the successes, but also be really honest. Like if I'm sad because we've lost a kid and I'm crying at home, I let them know I'm sad because we lost a kid at work today and I'm feeling like, did I do everything that I could? So I don't know that I have a great answer to self-care. I mean, how do you handle it? How do you just do your best, and I'm trying to be honest with my kids and raise them to understand you need to be kind and there's people that are hurting and that if you're hurting, it's okay to talk about that. This is a safe spot.
Do they come to any of your events or fundraising or?
Amira's started to come to a little bit more. It can be a lot for them to see. So they've seen my office. They've been there. They see when I do things on the news or hear me talking about things. And as Amira is getting older, she is more involved. I think it's really important for kids to see that and to understand what privilege is and to understand that you need to take care of yourself. And when things don't feel right, to talk about it. And I mean, my anti-trafficking work, I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so I'm like all over, turn off your location on your phone, do all this. So my daughter probably thinks I'm crazy and more overprotective because I see what I see. But I hope that one day they're proud.
Is there a lot of trafficking here?
Yeah.
Because we don't hear a lot about it.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is one of the most recent underage human trafficking arrests happened right here in Langley, in Walnut Grove. It was in the hotel on 88th, and there was underage girls being trafficked out of there. This is public in the news, legal proceedings happening. So this happens. There's a misconception that trafficking happens way over here, and this is an international problem, and that's, it's a problem in the Southeast Asia. And it's not. The majority of trafficking is local, domestic, inside Canada, and most people are trafficked by somebody that they know. We are on a major trafficking route that goes through northern BC, through here, through Alberta. We have about 20 to 30% of young people we're serving who are trafficked or exploited. Many of the risk factors for youth homelessness overlap the risk factors for being trafficked, right? And so if you're working with youth or you're working with at-risk youth, you need to be aware. So we recently created a toolkit around that so communities can be aware of what they're seeing. I mean, even businesses like yours, having staff that have an awareness around what that can look like is important, because it's going to take the whole community to really make a difference. But trafficking is a major issue in BC.
Does it start here, or does it more start like up north?
Both.
Both.
We have young people being trafficked from here to the north to work in camps. And we have people being trafficked from the north to the city. And that can look like ads online. It can look like what people traditionally think as working on the street. It looks like young girls and boys working in strip clubs. It is a real issue in BC. And I think people don't realize that. And they think it's just this faraway problem, or it's a downtown Vancouver problem. But Langley, Walnut Grove was the latest arrest for underage trafficking.
And obviously the hotel didn't clue in, or they were...
There's a whole lot about that, there's a lot of education in our communities that's needed, and we're working on that. But yeah, it takes everyone to watch that.
Do you find that there's more Indigenous people, or is it pretty even?
Yeah, so what we know is that Indigenous folks are overrepresented in many of these areas. So in homelessness, in trafficking in this province, in poverty, in all of these things. So definitely that's the case here as well. But it's not always the case, for sure.
And this is a toolkit that
Yeah, so we made this toolkit, and the idea is that it can be picked up by anyone. I'll bring you one. And it can provide the information to build capacity around the warning signs, around what you can do. And it's designed for organizations, it's designed for businesses, and it's designed so that even if you are the only person working in a tiny remote community or the only person in your small business, that you can pick up this toolkit and build your capacity to recognize and respond to this, or to have better conversations in your community about it, and to find community, that you're not alone, and that it's going to take all of us to really make a difference. If you have young people in your life, you need this toolkit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have that. What other sort of resources and tools do you have that other people that maybe are listening to this can learn from, that will hopefully help in the future?
Yeah, for sure. So another thing that I think is really helpful across sectors is our work around trauma-informed practice. Because what we're trying to do is build a community where there's no wrong door for these young people. That if you're a young person and you need support or someone to talk to, and you go into a clinic or you walk into a small business, you're going to find somebody there who is welcoming and is kind. And even if they can't help you, they're going to know who can, and build that network so that that young person stops falling through the cracks, because that's when we're losing these kids. So another way we do that is through our trauma-informed practice training. And we do that across sectors. I've trained MRI techs, I have trained banks, I have trained schools, I've trained small businesses. And it just talks about what trauma-informed practice is. And that matters because when you're engaging with each other, but let me tell you the difference it will make in the supervision and oversight of your staff, because your staff are coming with these trauma histories too. And so if we're all approaching our lives in this way, that's when we're going to see real change in our communities. Because these things aren't just ticky box trainings. It's really about a shift in our culture, because what's happening is not working. Clearly, people don't have housing. People are dying of overdoses. Clearly, we're getting something wrong here. So those are some of the ways that we engage across the sector to create that change and awareness in our communities.
Cool.
Yeah. Want me to come train your staff?
Sure.
Yeah.
We have lots of people that come into the store from all, especially in Langley, downtown 𝐏𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐿 too, all different walks of life. I know 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐿 definitely needs more services out there.
They
working
do.
on it,
They have one really great youth organization out there, the Cyrus Center. We've worked with them, and yeah, the more people that know better, the better our communities are going to be. People want to do well. People want to have healthy communities.
Yeah.
People want to have businesses that they're not worried about the windows being broken in.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not naive. There's serious issues in the community, but I think if we can invest in the youth, it's really an investment in community, because if you can impact the life of that youth, it's not just them, right? It's their parents, their friends, their aunties, their uncles, their future children. So really, we're talking generations of change.
And those are also the people that grow up. And if they're growing up on the streets around all these people that are breaking windows and causing issues, they're going to be that way too, unless they are directed on a different road.
And we need to think about, like, why are they breaking the window?
Yeah.
People don't just wake up in the morning, for the most part, and think that I want to be a criminal. This is not, it's not what this is about. So getting curious, what's the meaning behind the behavior, and how do we intervene on that instead of just the window breaking? Because just the window breaking is a Band-Aid. Yeah. And they're going to keep breaking your windows. So that's a lot.
So you were just on TEDx.
TEDx.
You want to tell us a little bit about it?
So that was totally by accident too. I feel like I do a lot of things by accident.
Okay.
Maybe we should stop talking to people. But so we had this donor that heard me speak at an event, and she's very connected to the TED world. And so she somehow managed to convince me to do this. And let me tell you, it's more than just showing up for the talk. So you have to go through this whole process to get a spot. And then you spend about 6 weeks on this script, and they have a whole team that's wonderful and supports you. And it's all amazing. And I can say that now. In the moment, it felt like a pretty intense boot camp. Okay. So they rip apart your script for 6 weeks until it's this like little packaged, lovely thing. I'm used to talking a lot, but I'm not used to scripts. So that was a whole thing. And then you spend 6 weeks on delivery, and they have like acting coaches and like they.
Oh, I just thought just a regular Joe just goes up on that stage. And
so did I. And no.
Okay, cool.
It's a whole months-long thing. You start in September. I did it in January. And you have a one-on-one coach, and they like tear you apart and then build you up.
So someone like sponsoring you to do this? Is it?
No.
You have to pay to do this?
You don't have to pay to do it, but you're also not paid.
So you need to adjust the mic.
Sure.
Bring
This?
Bring it toward you.
Like this?
As close as
Okay. You're not paid to do it, but also don't get paid to do it. So it's a huge commitment. But the idea around it is that you have an idea we're sharing, and you want people to have a shift in thinking. So I was committed to doing that. I think we need a shift in thinking around youth homelessness and the belief that it's just organizations like Covenant House that are going to solve the problem. No, it needs to be everyone. There's no such thing as someone else's child. We've got to do this better. Yeah. And then I did the talk in a big theater, and it was really scary. And now it is with the TED gods for editing. And then it will be on the TED website.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's exciting. It's also really nerve-wracking. I'm hoping it's not terrible. It doesn't look terrible.
So you had to memorize it?
You have to memorize it.
And how long was your talk?
So TED Talks have to be between like 10 and 12 minutes. I think mine's like 11. So I was right in the middle of the pack. But yeah, they have really strict rules around it. They'll be looking for speakers soon if you're interested.
No, I'm not.
Okay. I think there could be a really great talk on small business. Why not?
Script? I like to wing it.
So do I. But it's a new skill set. I just wing it too. I've never had a script until TED.
Well, I'm sure it was a good learning opportunity.
Yeah, it was. It was great. Met a lot of amazing people who were talking about pretty cool stuff.
Is there like a topic, or was everyone just talking about their...
So I was talking about youth homelessness. There was someone there talking about consent. There was somebody talking about mindfulness. There was the CEO of an organization that does food recycling, so that the stuff doesn't get thrown out at the store. So she was talking about food waste and the environment. There was somebody talking about their mental health journey and their experience. He kayaked. I think it was a kayak. Some kind of really tiny boat from like here to Alaska. Crazy, but yeah, so lots of different things.
Sounds cold.
An actor, juggler guy.
What did he talk about?
He does like acro yoga. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Very talented.
So the TED Talk itself, there wasn't a theme of the day that everyone...
The theme is around like a shift in thinking.
Okay.
We had a former Canadian women's team soccer player. That was pretty cool.
Your daughter plays soccer, doesn't she?
My daughter plays soccer and was fangirling big time. I was cool. She didn't care about my talk. She just cared about Andrea's talk. But it got her there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So was the day of, was it long?
It's a full day event. And it's really cool. They bring in entertainment. So they have speakers, entertainers. There's a lunch. It's a full day ticketed event. So that's pretty cool. It's a great community building event, which is really what's behind all of that sort of stuff, right? And getting people thinking differently.
Yeah. Okay. What is something that you think the community can do better to help youth?
What do I think the community can do better? I think that the community just needs to understand that homelessness is the least interesting thing about them. That these are young people with hopes and dreams, just like you and I have and had as young people. And that they're not just criminals and misfits. And if they just went home, problem solved, it's not that simple. And that if we can truly see them and help them understand their worth, then their potential is limitless. And there's so many ways you can get involved. It's not just about donating money. It's about correcting stigma at the dinner table when you're having a dinner party and you hear somebody saying about, oh, that drug addict. It's like, let's talk about that. Like, I actually heard about this youth that actually is becoming a doctor,
Yeah.
You can volunteer. You can say hi to somebody on the street instead of just looking away. You can hug your babies, hug your friends' babies a little tighter, right? So there's something that all of us can do. And it's not just about money.
Are there any organizations like in the Fraser Valley that you recommend like for volunteering at?
There's so many. It really depends on what your interest is and what your comfort level is. But there's a lot of amazing organizations across the Lower Mainland. You can also run events. We do sleep out events and school events. The Salvation Army in Langley is doing some amazing work. The food bank is so important. Boundary, Encompass in Langley is doing amazing work with young people.
I haven't heard of those ones.
If you are interested in getting involved, call me. I think we can share my contact info. And I will get you connected in your community, wherever you're listening from. I mean, the internet and Spotify. I have to talk about Spotify. We might have people listening from who knows where. But if you want to get involved in your community or with Covenant House, send me a note and I'll make sure that you get to where you want to be.
On that note, how do they find you?
They can find me through Covenant House. So if you look at covenanthousebc.org, you can find there. My email is probably long to say right now.
We can put it in the comments.
Can we put it in the comments? We'll put that there. But you can always reach me through Covenant House. You call Covenant House and ask for Chelsea.
You're the only Chelsea there?
Might be one other, but it'll get to me. Don't worry. covenanthousebc.org. And you can reach me through there. You can reach me on Instagram, just my name.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to like share, talk about?
I just think it's so cool that people are willing to have these conversations because these conversations matter and then they start to build momentum. And also just to highlight that you can really make a difference. Like what you have done for Covenant House is so important. We've been involved with different Christmas opportunities before that have meant so much. But more importantly than those concrete things, the awareness that you have increased for us because of your platform we're just so grateful. It reaches people that we wouldn't on our own, entirely different demographics. So imagine if all of us,
we all started sharing a little bit more.
Doing that, like share something or ask a question. And this type of stuff is what saves lives.
I think more conversations need to be had about these topics. And then maybe they wouldn't be such a like faux pas that like, you don't talk about those things. You don't talk about drugs. You don't talk about overdoses. You don't talk about all these things.
Yeah. I mean, it impacts all of us. We all have somebody in our lives, whether it's ourselves or family members or friends, that mental health, family histories, they all came from somewhere and they weren't all rosy, peachy, exciting childhoods, right?
Yeah.
So it's impacting all of us. The difference is some of us had somebody in their life who helped them understand they were worth it and then they could keep going.
And you don't really want to wait until your child overdoses or something like that to really take it seriously. Like those are always the people that are the loudest and like are really passionate about it. But like, why wait until something that bad happens to really stand up for it?
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And we don't have to keep losing the people that we love. This doesn't need to happen. And we can stop it. So one conversation at a time.
Yep. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Megan.
Oh,
I brought you treats.
Chelsea brought treats from Blacksmith Bakery. I don't know what camera to show it to, but I'm going to show it to all of them. But they look delicious. Blacksmith Bakery is in, well, it's in a lot of places. Latimer Village,
That's from
Airport,
Latimer.
Fort Langley, Maple Ridge.
They're just all over the
They're
place
just all
now.
over the place, but it's a delicious bakery.
Eat the treats.
Yesterday I had to eat gross cookies, and I had to pretend to like them because I didn't want to say on the podcast.
I have not tried any of these, so I have no.
These are all very large.
That I don't even
Is
know.
there
That's
something I can just pick up?
you can pick anything. It's yours.
Is this a cake? I can't pick up a cake.
It's yours though. That's chocolate cake. That's chocolate cake, I think. I don't know. Give us a review. How's Blacksmith? Should we
now?
should we go back or no?
No, but it is very good.
All right. For sure, like better than the cookies yesterday?
They were gluten-free, dairy-free, everything.
That's not a treat. That's not a treat.
I'm not eating anymore.
I think there's a cherry thing. There's an espresso brownie lemon. No, I brought it for you.
I can't eat all of that.
No, I don't want to try it. It's a gift.
Okay, well, it was delicious.
It's a gift.
But it was actually really good. But
I'm kind of sad I didn't get the offensive comments from your co-host. I'd like to. Well,
I think his joke was,
you wouldn't hate them after you met me.
how come they can't just sleep in my backyard or something? And I didn't understand what he was talking about. And then
It's a good question. Why can't they? Is he willing to set up a
He
tent?
lives in a townhouse, so I don't think he has a backyard.
If he did, we could have a chat. You know, there's some great modular housing we could pop up in their yard.
Sounds like a strata issue.
You can't have age limits in stratas now, can you?
No, but I think you could have modular housing issues.
Laneway housing. I'm sure we can frame this. I'm confident. I'm very creative.
We do know township council. Yeah, we do. I don't know where. I have to read something to end this. There's a thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have chocolate on my face.
No, it's not like whipped cream or something.
Okay. Have fun editing this, Dan. Okay, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions for Chelsea or us, comment below or reach out to us on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe because we make those hits every single week. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5 stars because it gives us fulfillment. We need to carry on with our day. See you on the next one. I should proofread these things before you say. I just screenshotted what he texted me. We're done.
Once you get enough 5-star